Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1998 comedy movie titled There's Something About Mary. Now, There's Something About Mary runs for 1 hour and 59 minutes long. It is directed by Peter and Bobby Farrelly. It is produced by Michael Steinberg, Bradley Thomas, Charles Wessler, and Frank Bedore. The script was written by Peter Farrelly, Bobby Farrelly, Ed Decter, and John J. Strauss. It is composed by Jonathan Richman. It is also narrated by Jonathan Richman, who also serves as kind of like a singing narrator. He's also joined by some other guitarists, I don't know who, and they seem to just follow along during the whole narrative. Alright, like I said, he also composed the movie. The cinematography was done by Mark Irwin, and it was edited by Christopher Greenberry. And the stars of the movie are Ben Stiller, Cameron Diaz, Matt Dillon, Chris Elliott, Lee Evans, Lynn Shaye, Jeffrey Tambor, Markie Post, Keith David, W. Earl Brown, Sarah Silverman, Khandi Alexander, Willie Garson, Harland Williams, Richard Tyson, Rob Moran, Jonathan Richman, Steve Sweeney, Lenny Clarke, Richard Jenkins, and NFL superstar Brett Favre. Okay, basking in the glory and showing no apologies for the raunchy humor, misogynistic characters, and ridiculing situations that should not be ridiculed. Yes, unfortunately, there is some um, jokes, um, like I said, politically incorrect humor. This movie does unfortunately has a bad habit of ridiculing um, special needs individuals, which even I have to say is quite offensive, being the fact that I am of the autistic spectrum myself. I don't think it was really right that they ridiculed special needs people. You know, they did drop the dreaded R word on a few times. They also tell a lot of homophobic stuff, and this movie is definitely saturated with a lot of misogyny that is probably something that was probably okay for 90s standards, but by today's sensitivities, this will never have gotten the green light. If you can but however, it's not all as bad as you seem. I mean, if you could actually just accept those flaws and you could just sit back and be a casual viewer without getting all uber hypersensitive about these issues that I had aforementioned, then you probably might enjoy this late 1990s romantic comedy. And maybe this movie itself was originally intended to be a lighthearted comedy, but then, once it got into the hands of the Farrelly brothers, I guess they decided, fuck it. We're not gonna do any schmaltzy Julia Roberts, Hugh Grant, Colin Farrell, Sandra Bullock, Tom Hanks romantic comedy mushy bullshit. We are going to we're gonna make it raunchy, and if you don't like it, here's just two little pieces of advice for you. Okay, maybe 3 words. Don't watch it. Don't have to spoil it for other people. I guess that was their kind of ways of saying it. But of course, to modernized sensitivities, it would never have been greenlit by today's standards. Sure, there's something about Mary may not fly to the modern era where everything is watered down and more sensitive in their presentations. However, if you're willing to realize that, hey, it's just a fictional story, and that the characters seen are actors and actresses playing off their respective roles and leaving it at that, then you might find this film to be both charming and entertaining. And like I said, if you don't like the movie, don't watch it. There you go. So, under the direction of the Farrelly brothers, the film would be something taken from the pages of comical directors like Blake Edwards and John Waters, and maybe even throw in some John Hughes and Judd Apatow style humor, while combining slapstick, merging together a romantic comedy narrative to show that not all romantic comedies are sentimental mush. I mean, if you guys still pine over the Sleepless in Seattle's and the While You Were Sleepings and the Notting Hills, go for it. Good for you. But you're just not going to find any of that bullshit there. But bullshit here. If you could take something generic and have an original spin to it, then churn the thread into gold, there's something about Mary is definitely pure comical gold. Though it supplies a plethora of bathroom jokes, including, wasn't there a scene where Cameron Diaz was combing her hair with some gel, but unfortunately it wasn't gel. It was actually what's the best way to put it? Man jelly. And then she had her hair kind of like sticking up. Yeah, that kind of humor, where there would be plenty of jokes about the human anatomy. You might also have jokes about farting and shitting and things like that. There's plenty of bathroom humor to go around. If that's something that you enjoy, well, hey, to each their own. And even for a guilty pleasure, I also found a lot of amusement in this movie. I mean, I actually sat back and laughed. At first, I thought it was going to be a schmaltzy romantic comedy, but then I saw the Farrelly brothers are into it, and it's like, uh-oh, these guys are not going to take subtlety at all. Alright, there's no Nora Ephron in this. The Farrelly brothers succeed in getting straight to the bathroom humor, and the opening scenes also features Ted Strowman, a young Ted Strowman, played by Ben Stiller. We start the opening scenes back in I guess, the late 70s or early 80s, in his high school years. The opening scene has him getting ready to go to a prom date with Mary Jensen, but he accidentally ends up getting his genitals crushed by his pants zipper at Mary Jensen's house while he was taking Mary, played by Cameron Diaz, to the prom. And just by the scenes of him getting his genitals stuck between his zipper, that actually, believe it or not, that fucking hurts. You could go ahead and make as much jokes you want about having the skin is being eaten alive by your zipper, but I'm telling you, it might be funny from an eyesight, but if you actually felt having your dick being eaten by your zipper, okay, that's fucking painful. And the gag goes like around 10 minutes, and it tends to extend itself as rescue units from all sectors. I'm talking about the police, the paramedics, and the firefighters. They come and rescue this unlucky fellow and even go far as by dropping him while he's being whisked away to the hospital on a gurney. I mean, they even look down at his genitalia and they say, he's a bleeder, and it just made some kind of a public spectacle of himself, even though it was never intended to be that way. All he just ever wanted to do was go out on a date with Mary Jensen. And then all of a sudden this bullshit happens. So instead of going out to town in a limo, he's going out to town on a gurney on his way to the hospital so that they could dislodge the zipper that is chewing away at his dick. And this goes on for like about the opening 10 minutes. And even I think I'm even going as far as to go on a little bit too long about it. The opening scene alone is just a set piece for the many zany things to come. It may get on your nerves at first, but after seeing it again, it's actually quite funny. Even if it is long and monotonous. And I mean the running gag. I mean, I'm sure this thing is also quite long, but however, after being eaten away, it probably got cut down by a few inches. And every time I look at it, all I just gotta say is, ouch. Even though many might think that the scenes involving the sleazy PI Pat Healy, played by Matt Dillon, can be quite cringe-inducing at first glance. But after a second watch, he is really the main reason why this movie stands out, as Matt Dillon practically steals every scene he's in. And a lot of people are probably wondering, what is his function in the story? Well, apparently, many years after that humiliating and horrific incident, Ted has never been able to fully, well, not only get over the fact that he had his pecker eaten away by his pants zipper, but also because of the fact that, on a sad and maybe a little more serious note, he missed his opportunity to date his girlfriend Mary. He missed the prom. He missed his one and only opportunity to go on a date with the girl of his dreams, which apparently is, unfortunately, she is the girl of practically almost every male on this planet's dream, as I will get to very briefly. But, years have passed, and he just has never fully ever gotten over her. In fact, he's still single, even though, he's educated, he has a job, he seems to be pretty successful in his respective field. So, good for him. But he still has never gotten over. And he misses her. And sometimes he just wonders, like, what has become of her? Where is she? And this is where he hires this private investigator to go out and search for Mary Jensen. But like I said, Mary Jensen is the girl of Ted's dream. But as I've also mentioned before, she's also the girl of a lot of men's dreams. And apparently it could become so overwhelming that Mary herself can't catch a break, because every guy wants to grind their gears into her. And even now I'm making kind of sexual innuendo type jokes. And yet I'm a very straight-edged individual. But I just can't help myself, because this movie actually contains quite a lot of sexual innuendo, and the things that I just said earlier is actually tamer in compared to what is featured in this movie. Healy was hired by Ted to track down his lost love, who he's still pining over, even though it's been 13 years since the disastrous incident, in hope to reunite and rekindle their friendship after they've lost contact since that horrific accident. But like I said, he's not the only one. Other people include some educated, scholarly British guy who's on crutches. And then there's also some other weirdo who goes by the name of Woogie, who, if I'm not mistaken, is some weirdo who I believe has a shoe fetish. And he also has a lot of spots on his back. I don't know. So it's played by Chris Elliott, and it's some guy who goes by the name simply as Woogie. Healy, however, has other tricks on his mind. You see, not only do these guys want Mary, the fact of the matter is that these guys are only just after her for her looks and really nothing more. And they're not all as sincere as they want him. I mean, they're all stalking her. They're all after her because of her irresistible looks and her sweet charm, which she has. I mean, Mary Jensen is the walking, living, talking Betty Cooper. If you ever read the Archie comics, Betty Cooper is a type of person who's pretty on the outside, and she also has a lot of inner beauty as well. I've, you know, half the male population want to get in her, want to get into her. But the question is, who is the most sincere? In the case of Ted, his love and passion for her is not basically just an obsession, but because he actually really authentically genuinely likes her, not just for her looks but actually for who she is as an individual. And sure she's not sore on the eyes. She is good looking, she's attractive, and she has a great perfect body. But it's not just her outer beauty that men gravitate to, it's her inner beauty. She is an orthopedic surgeon. She comes across as a genuinely sweet, nice young lady. She also has a lot of love for her brother Warren, who, as I mentioned, is a special needs individual, even though the actor who plays him is in real life not a special needs individual. He's just portraying, which, could offend people. And it's just unfortunate he's played more as a comic relief than someone who we have to genuinely look after, you know. But he's played, unfortunately, for comedy, but I don't really go for that or condone it too much. But fortunately, he's not exactly a principal character. He's pretty much a minor character, so I guess we could make some exceptions. He's not the main focal point in the narrative, but he does show up pretty much so. And that's kind of like who Ted loves about Mary. And it's actually genuine love. It's not just some sneaky, hypocritical, fake an identity type of thing like these other people have been doing. Like Healy. Healy, however, like I said, he was sent to go and investigate what Mary has been up to. So then when he comes back, he tells Ted all kinds of bullshit fibs about her. So then Ted makes it upon his own to fly to Miami in hopes to rekindle and reunite with Mary, in hopes that they can actually become a genuine couple. And wants to reunite with her, but was never able to live up to the expectations after the horrific accident. Like I said, Healy has tricks on his mind. He wants Mary to himself. Healy goes incognito as an architect to try to impress her, but he's being under dark suspicion by a neighbor's dog who he accidentally overdoses on. Now, don't worry, folks out there, all you animal lovers. No animal was harmed during this movie. But yes, the dog ODs, and there's a scene where he tries to resuscitate him. It's played for comical effect. It's not. Well, we expect it's the Farrelly brothers, so grossed out humor does come into play. But listen, it's just an act. There's nothing, to be alarmed about, although people will probably find some excuse just to be alarmed. Because that's the crazy clown world we live in today. The scenes where he revives the dog looks like a scene taken from a cheesy television sitcom, especially something with a more 70s, 80s type of thing. When he takes his act to the extreme by electrocuting, electrically charging the canine, with those kind of clamps that you use to revive a person when they have a heart attack. This scene was actually very funny. Relax, guys and girls. No animals were harmed when this movie was made. Checking in just slightly under the 2 hour mark. I said over the 2 hour mark, but I made a mistake. The Farrelly brothers are definitely not good when it comes to speeding up their delivery of jokes. They have a tendency, however, to overdo it with a certain scene and will beat you over the head with it until you're left with no choice but to break down in laughter. Like I said, the opening scene where he gets his dick caught between the zippers of his pants. Physical comedy is what the Farrelly brothers specialize in. Subtlety is not optional in this movie. Like I said, you want subtlety, go watch When Harry Met Sally. And even there's some levels of over the top in that too as well. And then it was great that they cast Ben Stiller in the leading role because he's just great at physical comedy. And this is kind of like a comedy that he seems to somewhat organically specialize in. Even his altercation with that same pooch is rib-tickling funny. Dillon definitely has a bit of some awkward moments at times, but then there's something about Mary. He does an admirable job to play off a goofy sneak, and his efforts show that he's willing to test waters in every role he tries to perform. Another equally memorable performance comes from Lee Evans, who plays another deviant who also wants to win the love of Mary. He kind of passes him off as an intellectual scholar who is making himself off as a cripple when really he's actually not really who he says he is. He's actually really some pizza delivery guy. Oh, and he doesn't even speak with a British accent. Tally-ho. No, he's just some doohickey pizza delivery guy who just wants to grind his gears with Mary as well. But that leads me up to, but I mean, I've mentioned, a lot about Ted. I've mentioned a lot about Healy, Pete, Detective Healy. But then I also have to ask myself, since this movie is called There's Something About Mary, people are now asking me, what about Mary herself? Why didn't you mention Mary? Or are you just as much of a sexist as all these other deviants who are after her? Well, for one thing, Cameron Diaz herself may be rendered as a mere straight character, but she definitely has enough charm and optimism to win anybody's heart. She actually plays along with the whole she the whole schemes very well. And she also mentions that she was currently in a relationship, a steady relationship, with a guy named Brett. And then, much to Ted's surprise, the Brett that she mentioned, well, it just so happens that, unlike a lot of attractive girls, you don't find very many who actually love football. And I'm not being sexist here. I mean, maybe there are girls out there who love watching football. Personally, me, I'm not exactly a huge football fan myself. But I will say this. I think it's actually kind of cool. And maybe Cameron Diaz herself loves football. I mean, she was in a football movie the following year called Any Given Sunday, which she co starred with Al Pacino and Jamie Foxx. But here, yes, she's dating uh, Brett Favre. Brett Favre. I can't pronounce his name. I'm sorry. I know it's spelled Favre. Favre. I think that's how his name is pronounced. Yes, she is currently dating him. And then once Ted sees that he's got no chance against this big muscly football hunk, I guess he decides to give up hope. But then in the end, she realizes that although yes, he seems to be the sweet charmer and he's good on the eyes to the female population, she has often even confessed that she all along has always been attracted to Ted, and that she often felt bad that, after all these years of losing contact after that horrible accident, it was good that the movie ended with them being back together again. So even though in spite of all the raunchiness that this movie has to offer, there is a huge level of sweetness to this movie. If you can ignore the toilet humor or just sit back and enjoy the over the top comedy antics and not be offended, then you might like this movie. It's not as bad as everyone thinks. Well, everyone who has oversensitivity. So let's see, of course, rounding out the supporting cast, we have Chris Elliott as Ted's friend, Woogie. And we also have Lynn Shaye as Mary's neighbor, Magda. They also provide some well-intended laughs. I'm sure this movie may not be on the side of modern era sensitivities by not being politically correct, and the raunchy jokes might be a bit of overkill. It's still a great movie if you have 2 hours to kill. Under all the shock humor featured in There's Something About Mary, it's a film that has heart to it. We want Ted to rekindle his relationship with Mary, and we want Mary to make the right decision of who she wants to date. Though it has its share of flaws, it does make fun of things that should not be made of issues that should not be made fun of. You won't notice it because you'll be laughing until your face turns pink. So therefore, with all said and done, if even though the movie is raunchy, has a lot of toilet humor, has a lot of sexist, homophobic, and even ableist jokes that seem to take it to the expense of people who we should ridicule. If you can get past that or not take it too personally, this movie is still enjoyable. It's got a sweet love story to it. It's got some, foibles. It has some, a lot of, like sympathetic characters. It has its share of unlikable characters. A lot of hypocrisy comes into this movie, especially with characters played by Chris Elliott, Lee Evans, and Matt Dillon. If you could just not let these things overcome you, this movie is definitely um, highly recommended if you just want to sit back and have a good laugh. We all need a little bit of some humor these days. And I think this movie is the right antidote. So, when all said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give There's Something About Mary a 9. So, I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules: be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Carruth Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.